Greetings, everyone. It's time for the Alaska Weather Show on this Sunday, July 18th, 2021. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you from the National Weather Service. We're going to talk about some record high temperatures. The last few days, Anchorage has enjoyed record highs, 76 record high tying on Friday. 79 established a new record Saturday. Yakutat also set a new record high of 77 on Saturday. And thus far this Sunday late afternoon, Anchorage has tied its record of 79 degrees. So 3 days in a row there. South central areas, very warm temperatures. Thunderstorms have developed in Talkeetna Mountains crossing the Glen Ellen Highway. And we'll see more thunderstorms fire back up here as we go through Monday and Tuesday afternoons, especially along south of the Alaska Range and along the southeastern Alcan border. Highest fire danger will remain in east central areas, especially centered on the Yukon Flats. And coming up here as we head through early and midweek, it's going to be wet and cooler trend now across the west. At least the brief period of warmer summer weather, drier conditions is coming to an end. It's going to briefly heat up too in the east central areas by Tuesday. In fact, Fort Yukon, Eagle Village could be back up upper 80s to near 90 degrees. So again, highest fire danger early this coming week will be east central areas, especially around the Yukon Flats. There's also some elevated fire danger along the north side of the Alaska Range. And looking at the satellite imagery, we continue to see an area of low pressure spinning well off to the southwest of Haida. And as we look to the northwest, there is a stalled out front along just northwest of the northwest coast there, the upper Chukchi Sea, Arctic Ocean. Main weather feature, though, happens to be a ridge that's lying across southwest portions of the state, arcing over to the northeast. And then we have an area of low pressure out over the central Bering, and that's going to be bringing a trough of low pressure that's moving eastward into southwest areas here as we head through the next couple of days. So here's the weather map today. High pressure ridge extends from southwest all to the northeast there into the Yukon, and that's bringing this generally warmer and drier weather, but where we have some low level moisture and this instability with the daytime heating, scattered showers, isolated storms firing up. And that'll be the case not just Monday, but Tuesday afternoon, especially in some of the same areas. Back to the west, primary low pressures out over the central Bering with that trough arcing eastward. What's going to happen as we head through tonight, first trough lifts northward, that energy. And then as we go into Monday, you'll see a trough taking shape there that's going to be approaching the southwest coast. That's going to push more rain inland after we get by some showers and storms for Monday afternoon. And then by Tuesday, there's going to be a wave of low pressure develop around Bristol Bay. That's going to become the dominant low by Wednesday as it works its way east of Kodiak Island into the western Gulf. This is going to bring that cooler and wetter weather to the western half of the state here as we head through the first few days of this new week ahead. So temperatures tonight will generally be lower 50s across the southeast inner waterways. Warm mid, even upper 50s across portions of the south central areas. And then temperatures Monday afternoon, maybe not quite as warm because we're going to see a bit more cloud cover with some thunderstorms developing, but McGrath could pop an 80 degree reading there and also have some isolated storms there along the upper Kuskokwim River Basin. Tuesday morning lows, lower 50s inner waterways of the southeast, and then generally low mid 50s across the south central areas with highs still generally in the 60s, 67 there at Haines, and as we had 76 at Glen Allen, but cooling down, especially Anchorage westward as extensive cloud cover and showers overspread the region with that trough moving across the interior. And then across the far north, we are looking for lows generally in the 30s to around 40 degrees on the Arctic coast. Otherwise, 40s Seward Peninsula and lower mid 50s across the Yukon Valley. Temperatures Monday afternoon will be in the 50s still in the Seward Peninsula, but still 85-ish around Fort Yukon and Eagle Village, and perhaps 80 at McGrath. And then temperatures Tuesday morning will be in the upper 30s to mid 40s along the Arctic coast, as well as we head out to the western Seward Peninsula, and lows in the Yukon River Valley 55 to 60. And look at by Tuesday afternoon there in the far east along the Alcan border, upper 80s to near 90 degrees, but cooling down in the west, upper 40s along the coast, 50s elsewhere. And looking at the southwest peninsula, we are going to see temperatures for lows overnight, mid-upper 50s, 70s to possibly near 80 there as you go up along the Kuskokwim River Basin, 55 or so for highs as we get out toward the Aleutian chain at AKwx. And as far as looking further through Tuesday morning, lows will be in the 50s throughout the southwest interior, upper 40s along the western coast, Nunavik Island, down through the Aleutian chain. And then for Tuesday afternoon, cooling down instead of 70s to near 80, only in the 60s there at McGrath, but along the coast, Bethel, Aniak will be in the mid-upper 50s and only lower 50s along the western coast. Quick check of temperature outlook for Saturday, July 24th through Wednesday, July 28th. Temperatures may average a bit above normal across the north, especially north of the Yukon River, including the North Slope and Brooks Range. Cooler temperatures across the southeast, as well as extending out into the southwest and west. And precipitation may average below normal across central and northern areas, with a little above normal precipitation along the west coast, extending out into the Aleutian. So again, we've had a stretch of very warm and dry summer weather that will be coming to end for many places.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
It's aviation weather time, and for planning purposes, if you're planning a flight for Monday into Tuesday, we have a frontal boundary that'll stall out along and just north there of the northwest coast and Arctic coast. And then an area of low pressure, that's the main weather feature out over the central Bering, will be tracking northeastward across St. Lawrence Island up toward the Bering Strait by Tuesday. And a weak area of low pressure just remains southwest of Haida Gwaii there off the southeast coast. Otherwise, VFR conditions Monday morning across much of the interior. And as we go through Monday afternoon, some rather widespread isolated to scattered thunderstorms from the lower Yukon Valley across and along and south of the Alaska range. And then areas of IFR will continue just off the northwest coast and especially out across the Bering. As we go into Tuesday morning, general VFR conditions will be in place across much of the interior, even into at least a good chunk of the southeast. But you'll start to see IFR conditions pushing onshore there along the southwest and west coast up through the Alaska Peninsula in response to a trough of low pressure that will be advancing eastward with more moisture, lower ceilings, and some precipitation. By Tuesday afternoon, isolated scattered thunderstorms could redevelop anywhere from the western North Slope down across central areas of the Yukon Valley, especially across the southeast portion of the interior, including toward the Alcan, as well as the Copper River Basin. And we'll start to see IFR conditions spreading northeastward up into the southwest mainland and along the west coast. So past conditions Monday, Aniktuvik as well as Adigan will enjoy VFR conditions. As we go further south and west, though, there will be isolated to scattered thunderstorms in the vicinity of Lake Clark and Merrill Passes despite VFR conditions. And we expect in thunderstorms, isolated storms in vicinity of Rainy Pass with VFR conditions. Windy Pass will see VFR conditions, the best chance of thunderstorms south entrance southward. So if you're flying along and south of the Alaska range is where the best chance of thunderstorms will be. Again, Isabel also seeing VFR conditions with perhaps an isolated storm south entrance southward. And then in the vicinity of Metasta Pass, there could be an isolated thunderstorm with VFR conditions. Tanita also could have isolated scatter storms in vicinity with VFR conditions generally prevailing. And then Portage should generally see VFR conditions on Monday, but a better chance of some thunderstorms as you fly north of the east entrance away, as you get away further inland away from Prince William Sound or the west entrance. And then finally in the southeast panhandle, Chilkoot and White should enjoy VFR conditions throughout the day on Monday. Freezing levels are generally above 10 to near 12,000 feet across the interior. There is a pocket of below 8,000 foot ceilings around Haida Gwaii there, associated with a weak area of low pressure that's just been sitting and spinning there off southwest of the coast there. And then up there in the central Bering, northern central Bering, we have freezing levels at or below 10,000 feet. Best icing potential, at least the best chance, will be out over portions of the northwest coast on through the Bering. 10,000 to 16,000 feet there along the northwest coast. 12,000 to a flight level of 18,000 feet, including St. Lawrence Island in the northern Bering, and then as along a frontal system Trough extends down into the eastern Aleutians, 13,000 to a flight level of 21,000 feet, and then a little pocket of 10,000 to 16,000 feet southwest of Haida-Gwaii. Associated with that area of low pressure, you can see the circulation showing up even at 30,000 feet rather there, southeast of the Gulf. And then the main weather feature, high pressure centered up over the eastern parts of the state, northwest Canada, and then that low that's back out over the northern Bering. As we drop on down, you can see some stronger mid-level winds coming on shore from the south-southwest, 35, 45 knots there along the west coast, upwards to 55 knots from the west, northwest there out over the Aleutians. And as we take it down even further, Monday we'll see 3,000-foot winds upwards to 35 knots along the northwest coast, and then also entering the southwest coast there, the YK Delta, including Nunavik Island, with winds of 45 to 50 knots throughout the eastern and central Aleutians. Turbulence, well, the best chance of turbulence will be in the northwest coast, surface to 4,000 feet, some pockets there. Surface to 4,000 feet, the central and eastern Aleutians. And keep in mind there could be turbulence in the vicinity of thunderstorms, especially from the lower Yukon Valley all the way eastward to the Alcan border.
I can't really name anyone that has so much integrity as she does to the things that she's accomplishing. It's pretty amazing. Having Claire as a role model, just a strong woman in science and just so smart and so kind. It's just a huge confidence booster is that, hey, I could do that too, you know? That's possible, that's successful, that's what I want to do.
I would characterize her as a pioneer in the field.
The amount and quality of the work she's put out is second to none.
I know people who have a lot of tenacity. I know people that have integrity, but it's rare that people have both together in that, you know, that combination that Claire does.
Every morning, Dr. Claire Parkinson gets up before sunrise and runs 2 miles to work. She hasn't missed a day in nearly 40 years. To know the evolution of sea ice and how we observe it from space is to know Claire. This year, she's celebrating 40 years at NASA.
When I arrived at Goddard, which was in July of 1978, it was an incredibly exciting period here. Satellites were pretty new, but a lot of data had been collected.
NASA scientists were inundated with information, and Claire was in a cohort looking at sea ice, trying to make sense of a jumble of very raw, very new data. It was around that time that Claire and her team, at the time led by Dr. Jay Zwally, created the principal sea ice record that we use today.
How does something like that record help you do your job?
Oh, that record is fundamental to understanding sea ice. So without it, we wouldn't know how rapidly it's changing.
You may not realize it, but Claire's work studying the changing extent of the ice caps deeply affected our understanding of climate change, and relatedly, our understanding of how climate change affects life on Earth.
One of the clearest signals for climate change that resonates with people has been this shrinking of the polar ice cap in the summer that we're able to see because of Claire's work.
After we had a record that was about 15, 20 years long, we started noticing that the extent of the ice in the Arctic was getting smaller over time.
Sea ice is formed on the surface of the ocean, and therefore is made from seawater. The biggest concentration is in the Arctic, and it's also where the biggest loss in sea ice is occurring. Every year, NASA reports on the sea ice minimum and maximum extents. As expected, the data is concerning.
By now, not only has this trend toward lesser ice continued, but it's even accelerated, so that now the decreases are greater than what they had been.
These trends are deeply troubling, but one thing's for sure. Our awareness of shrinking sea ice extent due to climate change was propelled faster and further after Claire Parkinson arrived at NASA.
I mean, she takes her job seriously, and the health and welfare of those instruments in space, yeah, she's on it. You know, it's one of the things you don't worry about because Claire's in the loop on these things. It's going to be fine.
In science, we stand on the shoulders of giants, on the shoulders of those who explored before us. But then, some among us are giants.
For a scientist, it's incredibly exciting to be studying these glaciers and ice sheets right now because they're doing something that hasn't happened in thousands of years. We're watching changes take place that haven't happened since the end of the last ice age. Tuesday was cold, I almost froze my toes. Oh, what's it gonna be next week? Who knows? That's climate. Oh, that's the climate you got. You take a bunch of weather and you average it together and you're doing the climate rock.
At a glacial pace, it means something's happening so slowly you can barely tell it's happening at all. That used to describe the very incremental movement glaciers and ice sheets experienced each year. But now that's changing. We're tagging along with 3 NASA scientists to understand the different lengths they go to not only investigate ice sheets and glaciers, but also communicate their often complicated science to the public. First, let's get oriented. Ice sheets, in pink, pretty much occur in only 2 places, Antarctica and Greenland. Glaciers, in yellow, play a key role draining melt off the ice sheet. Glaciers are also found in the high mountains, but we'll get to those in another episode.
So we know that something's happening in Greenland right now that's unprecedented in the last several thousand years.
That's Dr. Josh Willis, oceanographer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Josh and his team are tackling one of the major environmental challenges of the 21st century, trying to answer fundamental questions about how melting glaciers impact sea level rise.
With my mission, Oceans Melting Greenland, or OMG for short, we're trying to understand just how much of Greenland's melt is caused by the oceans.
Along with being one of NASA's top scientists working on the cryosphere, Josh is passionate about demystifying climate change in typically unconventional ways.
I think by reaching out to people with a little bit of humor, a little bit of fun, maybe a song, you really have the opportunity to help people understand and come to terms with what we're doing to our planet. Because it's definitely happening and it's definitely a big deal, and we need to start preparing for it.
Down at the opposite pole, Dr. Kelly Brunt is getting ready for a major expedition.
In December and January this coming year, I'll actually be in Antarctica, down near the South Pole, collecting ground-based GPS data.
This is actually Kelly's second expedition to the South Pole. The first occurred in December and January of last year. Both surveys are critical and will help validate data collected by NASA's airborne campaign, Operation Icebridge, and the recently launched satellite mission ISAT-2.
All 3 of these layers, that ground-based, that airborne, and the satellite, are all tied together. The ground-based helps validate both the satellite and the the airborne helps give us more validation data for the satellites, but also a bigger story with respect to the depth of the ice sheet and what's going on underneath the surface.
While some scientists are taking measurements in the field, others are looking for answers in physics and lines of code.
For me, those projections that we are doing, they do have a very personal meaning.
Dr. Sophie Nowicki is an ice sheet modeler. That means she and her team have the important job of forecasting how ice will change in the future, which also predicts changes in sea level rise. It's a job she doesn't take lightly, especially since urban planning and infrastructure use her team's models to make decisions about the future and safety of their communities.
When we make those projections that are 100 years in the future, 100 years can seem so far away, like I don't have to worry about it, it's just too far. But actually they are not. It's really like the future that we are looking at that our children or grandchildren will see to experience.
Whether it's learning to communicate in new ways, traversing a swath of Antarctica in a massive piston bully, or taking responsibility for an impactful climate forecast, our NASA explorers are pushing the limits of discovery every day. But on a very human level, they're people with families and friends who have a stake in finding out why and how the planet is changing as rapidly as it is.
Every place, at least so far, that we have found life, we found water along with it. And so when we try to understand the thresholds for life, where life might exist, elsewhere in our solar system and the universe, water is one of those things that we look for.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
In today's Sea Ice Edge, we see a lot of open water there across the Chukchi Sea, and with rather brisk south-southwest winds, that's helping to pull away some of that shore ice, or at least the broken up ice that's near the shore. But look for that to be closing off again, especially along the far northwest Arctic coast from Wainwright on up through Prudhoe Bay, Kakavik. We are looking at winds turning back around to the northeast by Tuesday, so any openings there along the shoreline will be short-lived. And as far as what we have coming up here across the southeast panhandle, inner waterways, somewhat variable winds, 5-10 knots there, Ketchikan up through Petersburg, waves only a couple feet. South winds 15 knots, maybe 2 to 3 feet there, Lynn Canal. And then generally winds are out of the northwest, or have a western northerly component along the Gulf Coast, 10 to 15 knots, waves generally 3 to 4 feet. And with low pressure just continuing to sit and spin southwest of there, along the Gulf Coast. For Tuesday, winds will be out of the west there, Yakutat westward at 15 knots, waves only a few feet, and then northwesterly 15 to 20 knots from Gustavus southward to Sitka and Craig, with waves of 3 to 4 feet. And the inner waterways will see winds more southerly at 10 to 15 knots and waves 2 to 3 feet. South central areas, winds will be variable around 10 knots off of the Kenai and in the northern Gulf, as well as in the vicinity of Prince William Sound, with waves only a couple feet. Up through Cook Inlet, winds will have a southerly component upwards to 20 knots, and waves could be as high as 5-6 feet in a few spots, favoring that wind direction. And then on Tuesday, we are going to have a trough approaching from the west. An area of low pressure will eventually emerge by Wednesday east of Kodiak Island as it develops over the western Gulf. So winds southeasterly 10 to 15 knots there in the northern areas, 2-footers in Prince William Sound. As we get down toward the south end, southeast winds up to 20 knots and waves maybe as high as 6-7 feet there at the mouth of Cook Inlet. Winds will be variable at least the beginning of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, including Shelikof Strait there, around 10 knots and waves only 2 to 3 feet, but picking up ahead of that trough from the southwest 25 knots with waves 4 or 5 feet on either the Pacific or Bering side. As that feature works its way into the area on Tuesday, winds will shift more toward the west-southwest and be 20 to 25 knots on the North Pacific side with waves of 6 to 8 feet, and southwesterly 15 knots and waves 4 to 6 feet on the Bering side. And in the wake of that system, Monday, we'll see winds southwesterly across the eastern and central Aleutians at 30 knots and waves around 10 feet on the North Pacific side and 8-9 feet on the Bering side. And as that system further lifts northeastward inland across the western portions of the state, we will see winds more westerly around 25 knots across the Aleutians on Tuesday, Waves 9 feet or so there on the North Pacific side and 7 to 8 feet on the Bering side. And an area of low pressure will be lifting up to the northeast as we head crossing St. Lawrence Island Monday, and out ahead of it, winds will be southeasterly around 20, upwards to 25 knots there, St. Paul and St. George, with waves as much as 7 feet, but only 3 feet with the offshore flow there at Norton Sound. And then for Tuesday, as the low lifts through the Bering Strait, winds will be southwesterly off of the Kuskokwim Delta at 15 to 20 knots, waves maybe 6 feet, and then shifting more to the northwest at 15 knots once you get west of Nunavik Island and south of St. Lawrence. And for the Arctic coast, winds will be out of the south-southwest 10 to 15 knots on Monday. Southerly 15 to 20 knots, especially Point Lay south through Kotzebue Sound. Waves at least through the lower portion of the Chukchi Sea, 3 to 5 feet. And then behind the passage of this low, and we're going to see winds picking up out of the northeast, upwards of 25 to 30 knots along the northwest coast, with waves building to around 8 feet on the Chukchi Sea, and ice in place at Utqiagvik and Prudhoe Bay, with winds out of the northeast at 15 to 20 knots. And a quick check of tonight's weather. We see that low out through the central Bering. That's going to be one of the main weather features here the next couple of days. It lifts to the northeast and will be crossing through St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait early Tuesday. Meanwhile, low pressure spins up there at Bristol Bay and will become the main feature there in the northern Gulf as we head to Wednesday. So that's it for tonight's show. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.